Today, I'm going to share with you how to become a freight broker in 7 simple steps. I'm going to walk you through step by step by step on exactly what you need to do. And then at the end of that, you're going to be able to get, for those of you that stick around, you're going to be able to get this free download, which is the outline of this entire episode. It talks about all 7 steps and actually has links to additional resources that go into even more detail about these steps, okay? So we're going to talk about those 7 steps. And I think this is important because there's a lot of confusion. People get confused. What exactly do I need to do in order to become a freight broker, right? So I'm going to give you 7 steps, and I would prefer you do them in this order. It will probably make a lot more sense if you follow the order. So step number 1, the most important step is to get trained. Now, for those of you that know me, know I have Freight Broker Bootcamp, which is an online freight broker and freight agent training program. I don't care if you use my training or somebody else's training. Just get trained by a reputable source. There are 3 ways to get trained, right? There are 3 ways to learn to become a freight broker and get trained. One is you can get hired on the job, which is an on-the-job training where you get hired as an employee to go work for a brokerage. You go in and work every day and you start to learn the business. It usually takes a couple years to really learn the business that way, okay? The second way is you can do classroom training. Classroom training where you actually travel to a remote location, maybe in a hotel or in some sort of a building where you're actually in a classroom with 10 or 20 or 30 other people and you're instructed by an instructor. That usually requires you taking time off work or traveling, but that's also a very viable option. Then the third option, which is what I do with Freight Broker Bootcamp, is online training. It's all remote, 100% remote. You do it from home, from the comfort of your own home. You don't have to travel. You don't have to commute. You don't have to do any of that. You don't have to take any time off work. You can do it online at your own convenience. It's accessible 24/7, 365. So those are the 3 primary ways. You have to get trained. You have to learn the fundamentals if you are serious about building that business. So that's step number 1. Step number 2, get your freight broker authority. Now, as a part of most training curriculums, they're going to teach you how to get your freight broker authority. It's not that complex. You got to file an application with the FMCSA. You got to get a freight broker bond. You got to get your BOC3. You got to get your UCR. There's a few little requirements that you have to do in order to become an authorized and legally licensed freight broker, right? But you don't have to take a test. You don't have to have a college degree. You don't have to do any of that, okay? So it's really simple. The barriers to entry are very, very low. So step number 2 is, again, to get your freight broker authority, right? Now, step number 3, once you got your authority, is to find your niche. Now, you all know me. If you know me by now, you know that I'm a big believer that riches are in niches, and no more so than in the freight logistics industry. I have made tons and tons of money niching down my target market, meaning going into a small niche, not trying to please everybody, right? Finding a small niche. And there's several ways you can find your niche. It can be by equipment type. It can be by industry. It can be by geography. It could be a hybrid. There's a whole variety of ways you can find your niche, but it's really important that you do identify a niche. Now, it doesn't mean that you're going to be limited to that niche forever. It just means that you're starting with a very well-defined target of exactly who you're going after and who you're going to serve, okay? So you can always add niches later or expand into other niches. That's what we did, and eventually we were in almost every niche, eventually by the time I sold the company. But we started with one very small niche. We grew that niche. We started doing over 7 figures, and then we expanded into some other niches and grew beyond that. And then eventually, I was fortunate enough to do well over $200 million in sales as a freight broker. So find your niche. That's number 3, okay? Number 4, set up your home office. Now, setting up your home office is relatively simple. In today's age, to do business, you basically need a phone, a computer with internet access, and an office, right? You need a basic desk. You can even work from the kitchen table. But those are the basic office requirements. And of course, there are pros and cons of working from home. In my opinion, there are way more pros than cons, right? The pros are you don't have to commute, right? The pros are you can write off part of your home office as a tax deduction. There's a tons of pros, right? Less expensive than renting a facility, a lot more flexible, right? Less distractions, less office distractions, right? You typically have a higher job satisfaction when you have the flexibility of working from home, and you have more work-life balance. I mean, those are some of the pros, right? So working from home is one of the biggest benefits of becoming a freight broker or a freight agent, because what most people don't realize is that most freight brokers operate from home. They work from home. At least they start up from home. And then maybe after their first year or two, they may get an office because they're going to start hiring people. But ultimately, and I think even more so now with COVID and with the pandemic, the way it's changed the dynamics of business, I think you're going to see even more freight brokers working from home with a distributed staff that's also working from home, right? So setting up your home office, that's step number 4. Step number 5, bet you can't guess what step number 5 is. Leveraging technology, leveraging freight broker technology, like a couple of primary ones that you're absolutely going to need early in your business is one is load boards. You are absolutely going to need load boards. Things like getloaded.com and truckstop.com and the DAT. Those are all 3 primary load boards I would recommend you check out, see which is the best fit for you. You don't need all of them to get started, but you definitely need at least one. And so load boards are one of those places where carriers and drivers or carriers and brokers come together and they make a match. Truck drivers and carriers post their trucks, brokers post their loads, and a match is made. And at that point, a deal is made and margin is made. The carrier is served because they're able to keep their wheels moving. The broker is served because they're able to make a little bit of margin. And the shipper is served because their product goes from point A to point B. Okay? So leveraging technology. The other one under number 5 is your transportation management software, otherwise known as your TMS. So your transportation management software is really kind of the heart and soul of a brokerage. It's where you manage all of your customer orders. It's where you manage all your carrier data. It's where you typically manage a lot of invoicing and payments to ship carriers. So it really is kind of like the management system that brokers use to keep everything straight, to manage effectively and productively, I should say, manage your shipper's freight, right? So it's all in one place. It's very organized. It's very sequential. It has a workflow that allows you to be very effective at your job in regards to posting and covering and dispatching and invoicing loads. It makes that process a lot easier, okay? So transportation management software is another one. And there are a lot of softwares out there. And even in this report, I give you some links to where you can find some of the top freight broker softwares out there, okay? So step number 6 is partner with a freight broker factoring company. Now, the fact is, most people that start as a freight broker are going to need some sort of factoring. And what factoring is basically short-term financing that allows you to pay the carriers and some of your basic operational expense before you get paid by your shippers. Now, I'm not going to go into a real in-depth, detailed breakdown of factoring, because in this report that you guys can download at the end, I give you a link to a resource that goes into a lot of depth about factoring, exactly how it works as a freight broker, and how the flow of everything goes. And so, but you're going to probably want a freight broker factoring partner. And the importance there is obviously this: you're going to want to pay your carriers quickly, and sometimes your shippers are not going to pay you for maybe 45 to 60 days, whereas you're going to need to pay your carriers somewhere around 30 days or sooner. And so ultimately, that negative cash flow is going to create an issue, and that's why factoring companies exist. They fill that gap for a small fee and allow you to effectively run your business and scale your business, okay? It's usually short-term. It's something you use for a year or two until you build up your own business credit and you can establish some sort of line of credit with a bank. That'll be a lot cheaper and a lot more effective, but factoring companies are a great way to get started, right? All right, so that's number 6. And number 7, the last step is start selling and marketing your services to shippers, right? You've identified your niche. You know who they are. You've probably already made a list. Now you need to start reaching out to them and start selling and marketing your services to them. Now, there's a variety of ways you can do that. A lot of people do cold calling. Some people do more warm calling or social selling like I do. Some people use, cold email. Other people like to do face-to-face. Some people like to do networking at different trade events. There's a variety of different ways that you can start marketing yourself as a startup. You don't have to do them all, but my suggestion is find one that works for you and dig in and double down and spend your time developing those relationships with your target market. You need to start having conversations with that target market. One, so you can learn more about that target market and develop a better offer. And number two, to give yourself an opportunity to score, right? To put yourself in a position where you can actually start doing business with a shipper, okay? So you can see here in number 7, I list a whole bunch of resources about freight broker sales and marketing. So if you guys are curious about that, those are the 7 steps. And here's what I'm going to tell you. If you want a copy of the notes, right? If you want the notes, let me put it up here. Let's see. If you want the notes for this, go to freightbrokerbootcamp.com, and I'm going to put it up on the screen, /7 steps. freightbrokerbootcamp.com/7 steps, right? And this is the URL that you're going to want to go to in order to download this free report. Okay, this is going to give you the entire outline of those 7 steps. Plus, it's going to give you a ton of resources to other links, other articles, other downloads, other trainings that are going to fill in the gaps and exactly the step-by-step process. For example, setting up your home office and the different software companies, and different sales and marketing strategies, and links to the FMCSA and different requirements to get your authority. So this is a guide to walk you through the 7 steps that you need to follow in order to become a successful freight broker and freight agent. Now, remember, ultimately it all starts with training. So if you're curious, if you're on here listening, whether you're on replay or you're watching this live, if you're curious about becoming a freight broker or a freight agent, check out freightbrokerbootcamp.com. Again, you can download this first, and then you can check out freightbrokerbootcamp.com. We have a 60-day, 100% money back guarantee. We've trained over 8,000 students. It's got to be close to 9,000 by now. I got to check the numbers. And we've been around for over a decade. So I hope you guys enjoyed the training.